Now, I'm a sucker for romance movies, so I was excited to check out the new Netflix romantic drama, Along for the Ride. It's available now, but should you be watching it? The summer before college, Auden meets the mysterious Eli, a fellow insomniac, and while the seaside town of Colby sleeps, the two embark on a nightly quest to help Auden experience the fun, carefree teen life she never knew she wanted. This is based on a novel by Sarah Dessen, but I've never read it, so I can't even begin to speak how accurate this adaptation is. Emma Pasarow is Auden, a young woman who's spending the summer with her dad and her stepmom before she leaves for college. And she's kind of an uptight kid who self-sabotages conversations and interactions, which makes making friends a little bit difficult for her. When she arrives in the beach town where her dad lives, she has awkward and tense interactions with some of the kids her age, and then in a restless night of insomnia, she meets a young man named Eli. Eli is also an insomniac and spends his nights riding his BMX bike around the town. Now, once Auden and Eli begin a conversation, he discovers that she has a long list of things that she's wanted to do but never has. So he encourages her to go on a quest, to then have fun and experience what it's like to just be a teenager. Now, this threatens to be an angsty teen drama, especially as Auden encounters a trio of girls. Now, thankfully, though, the story does a fairly good job of steering clear of all the angst. The narrative tells us that Auden is off-putting to pretty much everybody that she meets, but in her interactions, we're not really shown many situations where she's said or done something detrimental that would jeopardize potential friendships. Sure, she's a bit odd, and because of her upbringing by very intellectual parents, she comes across maybe a bit pretentious or uptight, a little bit more than the average teenager, but it's not like she's some raging, rude person who is hateful to everyone. It was really tough for me to buy the classification that the story puts on her because, if anything, the ones she comes in contact with really do need to lighten up a bit and roll with it if someone's just a bit odd around them. The interactions between Auden and Eli, I think they're pretty predictable. I mean, we can see that there's a spark there, and the obviousness is fine because this is a romantic-leaning movie. Now, the story tries to introduce some mystique and mystery to Eli, but it doesn't let us linger too long in wondering about him as Auden does. And it's not too long before the story tells us his backstory, so any supposed suspense is ebbed away rather quickly. Now, I don't think this is a sticking point because the movie's just not a mystery. I mean, the character is just meant to have a little bit of intrigue to him, which it accomplishes for a bit. Now, at first, I was afraid that the group of girls that Auden runs into would turn into a mean girl situation, and then take the story down that path, which we've already seen before. Luckily, though, that doesn't happen. What we do get from their interactions was a nice surprise, and one that can give you a little bit of hope and humanity rather than looking for the gas and mashes just to burn it all down. Have you ever watched a movie or maybe seen a show where some particular sport or hobby gets a large amount of focus? And when I see this type of thing, it always makes me wonder if the writer or director is really involved in whatever the focus is so that they want to include it in their movie. Now, in this, BMX riding is a big focus for a portion of the story, with a lot of lingering shots on tricks and characters riding. While this is fine for a bit, there are portions that are shown that feel self-indulgent. Now, one scene shows some actual tricks, which are pretty impressive. And the scene doesn't last too long, so it's not too much of a negative to the experience. But then there's a scene where we watch another character riding their BMX through a dirt track, and it was so wildly uninteresting that I just wanted to fast forward it. The camera puts a lot of focus on the tires of the bike, ideally, I think, so that we can see the details of some cool jumps or tricks. But what we get looks like a timid and newbie rider going over some very small hills and moguls, barely getting the tires off the dirt. At no point did it feel like a person who was into BMX riding was actually riding the bike. And then when you couple it with the surrounding players cheering the character on like they'd done something spectacular, it all just felt off. The story also follows a common arc where our main character has to lose something in order to learn the lesson, only then to win it back after growth has been achieved. It's rote and familiar, but not unexpected, so it's not like the progression caught me off guard by being pretty much the exact same formula as a lot of romances. This is an hour and 47 minutes with the pace being steady. Now, there are a few times where I began to feel the time, and I think that's really because of the familiarity of the story. I knew where the arc was taking us, and I just wanted it to get us there more efficiently. Now, we have some adult characters in Auden's life that are meant to have a profound impact on the story, but I thought the story was doing okay on its own and didn't really need the inclusion of them to some of the degree that we actually get. There's Andie MacDowell, Dermot Mulroney, and Kate Bosworth, who each have an impact and say in Auden's life. They do work to shape her outlook and stance on the world, but the majority of this movie is about Auden trying to find her own place in it, so we don't need a lot of parental inclusion for that to happen. I think also some of it becomes more of a distraction to the story than something that's actually complementing it. So overall, Along for the Ride is a semi-sweet romance filled with predictable arcs and two fairly charismatic leads. I don't think this story is as strong as it believes it is, especially in convincing us that Auden is such a damaged or awkward character that she needs to learn to let go in order to experience joy. The acting is sufficient, with some performances being overly cheesy, but the charm and cuteness between the two leads I think is endearing. This is a good for a casual watch and will most likely leave you with a smile on your face, but I doubt you're going to remember it within a few hours. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and there isn't any violence. I give Along for the Ride 2.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a good romance you've seen lately? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.